Hello, thank you for joining again. So I'm in another place again because I'm still in Melbourne in Australia, but I am staying at a friend's house, so hence the scenery change. But welcome to part 4 of a 6-part series on the fundamental of nutrition, and today I'll be covering energy. And so we've already covered like an introduction, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and now we're doing energy, and then next week I'll be doing micronutrients, so that's your vitamins and your minerals. And yeah, I'll just start with a little update of what I'm doing. So I'm still in Melbourne and it's been amazing. Like, Melbourne is the place, and next year I think I'll be moving here, so it's been nice to sort of like test things out and see like family, friends and things. And then I'm going to Sydney tomorrow, up to Townsville, and then to Brisbane. So yeah, all go, but yeah, so I'm trying to fit this in, but doing this is like kind of a nice little structure that I can be doing whilst also like having fun. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. Yeah, so energy, it's not a nutrient, but it is like a massive component of food that isn't sort of talked about in its nuances enough. We all, like, normally we just hear things about calories and just take that for face value, like, but what is a calorie? And yeah, I'll be going into how we measure it, and then what actually is a calorie, and then how our bodies use it, and then how much our body needs, how to work out your own calorie needs, and then if you work that out, then what can you do with it if you want to have different goals like muscle gain, fat loss, blah blah blah, and whether you even should be doing like working that out or calorie counting, and like what are the problems with that, and some of the sort of things to be aware of when you're calculating them or starting your journey and figuring out how much energy your body needs. And yeah, so I want you to be confident in making your own decisions and having a bit more awareness about the different energy content of foods, and also knowing that calories are not the whole story and there's so much more to that, and we'll go into that a little bit more. I always have an opinion, so I'll be sprinkling that in as well. And I just think that it's important to know a bit about what if you're doing a behaviour, i.e. eating about 5 times a day, it's important to know a bit more about that. So yeah, that's what we'll be doing today. So as I've already said, calories is a very common way that we talk about energy. There are a couple of different ways we can talk about it, and this is the most technical I'll get, so just bear with me for like 1 minute. But yeah, so we have small calories, and that is just calories, and we have kilocalories. A kilocalorie is 1,000 calories, hence kilo, like kilogram, kilometer, whatever. And kilocalorie is what we really are talking about when we're talking about food. So on the back of a food label, it will have kilocalories, not calories, even though we use it interchangeably, but technically a calorie is a small calorie and it is 1,000 times smaller than a kilocalorie. And another metric or word we use to talk about energy is joules. And a joule, so 1 joule is equal, no, 1 calorie, so 1 small calorie is equal to 4.184 joules. And you can just round it to 4 or 4.2 or whatever is easiest. And 1 kilocalorie is equal to 4,184 joules. Because a kilocalorie is 1,000 times bigger than a calorie, kilocalorie would be 4,184 times bigger than a joule, if that makes sense. And we also have kilojoules, and a kilojoule is 1,000 times bigger than a joule, just like a kilocalorie is 1,000 times bigger than a calorie. And 1 kilocalorie equals 4.184 kilojoules. So when you see on food labels, sometimes they'll have straight up, they might call it cals or kcals, but you know they're talking about kilocalories. And if they have it written as kj, so kilojoules, you know that to get from kilojoules to get to kilocalories, you divide it by 4.184, or just like 4 in your head if that's easier, and then you get the rough kind of estimation. And it's just a different way of looking at it, and I think different areas use different metrics. I don't really know why I didn't look at that, but they do. And so now you can figure that out. So yeah, so if we use this soy milk example, as this is a food label, we find this on the back of like every single food item, packaged item. If we use this example, it doesn't say how many kilocalories we have, so we would have to work it out if we don't work in kilojoules, and the opposite can be done if you do work in kilojoules and you only have the kilocalories. But yeah, just simply dividing the energy in kilojoules by 4.184, or just by 4 if you're not fast. It gives you, so 6.49 kilojoules equals 155 kilocalories per that 250 ml serving. And yeah, I just thought I'd get that straight before I tell you what a kilocalorie is, because yeah, understanding how that appears on food labels and how we talk about it is quite key. So what a kilocalorie actually is energy, but it is the energy required to heat up 1 litre of water by 1 degree Celsius. And a small calorie is the energy required to heat up 1 gram or 1 milliliter, so that's 1,000 times smaller than a litre, heat it up by 1 degree Celsius as well. So it's a lot smaller amount of energy because it's 1,000 times smaller. And you may have done that science experiment in school when you get like a food item of some sort and you set it alight, you set it on fire, and the concept is like the more energy it has in it, the longer it will stay burning. So like a crisp will stay burning for a lot longer than a piece of lettuce. And that's essentially what we're doing in our bodies too. So we are burning the energy, the food, to release the energy. And another word for burning is like combustion and oxidation. So oxidation is just, it's a sciencey term, but all it means is with oxygen, you are releasing energy from something. And that's what our bodies are doing, but obviously there's no flames involved because we do it in a series of steps that are very controlled and blah, blah, blah. But that's how we do it. We're burning our food. And this burning or oxidation in our body to release this energy is so necessary because energy is just like key for survival and we can't live without it. Every cell in our body, every process requires some input of energy, and we get ours from food. So and if you don't have enough energy, aka you're beginning to enter like starvation mode, think early signs could be like irritability, fatigue, low concentration, feeling cold, weak, and then later a severe starvation is like hallucinations and death because your cells are not getting the energy it needs to do this normal bodily functions. And equally, well not equally, but like if you overconsume energy, then that energy gets stored in the bonds of fat molecules, which I spoke about in my last video, and that fat molecule is exists as adipose tissue or fat stores, so like yeah, under our skin or on our organs. And like I said last time, it doesn't matter, doesn't matter whether you get that energy from fat or carbohydrates, or sugar or protein. If you consume too much of it, then it does get stored as fat. So to get into some of the nuances around calories and things, it's really important to remember that we're not sitting there eating calories, we're sitting there eating food, and that food is normally accompanied by other foods, and our whole diet consists of varying factors like your sleep, stress, illnesses, previous diet history, your body composition, activity level, all those kind of things, and even like the other food that we're eating in our complex system means that we process calories differently individually and within ourselves. So an example is if you menstruate, then in the luteal phase, well, I can't say that, which is like the 2 weeks before you ovulate or bleed, that some women consume or need more than 10% more energy than normal, and again that can go right down to like 1% more energy than normal, and then that varies between people. So just an example of how we need different calories all the time, and if we all ate the same amount of calories, we would all process them differently. And if we just ate calories from one food group, like fruit and veggies, we'd feel like crap, it would be rubbish, and we'd be missing out on some of the amazing benefits of like whole grains and proteins and fats as well. And to work out how many calories or how much energy our body needs, we first need to understand how our body uses energy. And we have a few acronyms coming up, so just bear with me with that, but I'll put up a diagram that kind of illustrates this. But so we have our TDEE, which is our total daily energy expenditure. And this is how much energy we expend each day, right? And about 70% of this is made up of our BMR, so this is our basal metabolic rate. And a basal metabolic rate is essentially, if we just lay there and we didn't eat, we didn't move, fidget, anything all day, this is how much energy our body would expend just by doing bodily functions and things. So no activity, no eating, no nothing, that's just what your body needs to do that. And yeah, that varies between different people. And then we have our NEAT, so that's your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I had to look at that there. But that's all your energy that you're expending that isn't associated with like exercising, sleeping and eating. So this is your things like you're fidgeting, literally my arms right now, expending energy, just your little things, non-purposeful activity. And this makes up around 15% of our total daily energy expenditure, so like a significant amount. And then we also have our TEF, so our thermic effect of food. And the concept behind this is like we basically expend more energy just after we eat, so our metabolism goes up a little bit, and this accounts for about 10% of our total daily energy expenditure. And then we have our EAT, and this is important. I feel like a lot of you would be interested in this. This is our exercise activity thermogenesis, and this is all your purposeful activity. So your running, your sports, your gymming and things like that. And this only makes up around 10 to 5% of your your energy expenditure each day, which is quite low, which is probably quite lower than what you thought it was going to be. And this is really important if you are, for example, if your goal is fat loss, then really nailing your nutrition will help this more, because you're not actually you can be gymming heaps, unless you're doing an unreal amount of activity, you're not really going to be expending a significant amount of energy that your body would want to tap into your fat stores for. It's better to get that deficit from your diet. And someone asked me whether you need to be in a calorie deficit to lose fat, and the answer is yes. Unless you have like a hormonal or a metabolic disease or something like that, then yeah, that's generally how our metabolism works. So yeah, that's how we use energy just day to day. And these are all listed as a percentage in this diagram, and because we're all different, right? So it would be silly to put calories next to that, because we all expend different calories day to day and between people. But how do we like work that out? And you already know I'm about to say it's really complicated, but firstly, before I tell you how to work out your maintenance or how to work out your energy expenditure each day, I really firstly want you to sort of ask why you're trying to figure that out, and sort of like what you're going to do with that information too. So it might actually not be very helpful for you to know these calorie ranges and things, and it might be more helpful for you to just know more about like healthy swaps, and you might be very in tune to energy levels as they are, and maybe a more intuitive eating and just knowing about healthy swaps in general might be more helpful for you. I know that I do not calorie count right now because I have a rough history with all those like numbers and things, and I got so hung up on them that I thought I was doing it out of a place of like health, but actually I just like hated my body and hated myself, and it was manifesting very unhealthily. So it's a bit dramatic, but yeah, might as well be straight about it, because it's just not always healthy to be focusing on these numbers all the time, and you gotta live, you know. But you could just be curious, and you know, that's absolutely fine, and not have any emotions sort of tied to it. And I'm all about people figuring out their bodies and nutrition and how, you know, you can feel good with that. So it might be really helpful, and you might just be curious, and you might not even do anything with the numbers, it's just interesting, and that's fine. But you might also be quite happy with your physique and really just want to stay as you are and sort of figure out, how do I keep this? And in which case then working out your maintenance calorie range would be pretty good for you to use as a guide just every day. You might also want to build muscle, in which case figuring out your maintenance calorie range, slowly increasing it along with an appropriate training regime will help increase your muscle mass, because you need energy to build muscle. So you need to be in a surplus to build anything, whether that's muscle or fat, right? And you may also want to lose fat, and in which case figure out your maintenance calorie range and then really slowly decreasing calories will help your body switch to your fat stores to make up that gap in the energy. That's your deficit. But it's very important to note here that staying in any either surplus or deficit state for a long period of time isn't good for your body, because your body adapts and your metabolism will change over time, and it's quite stressful. especially in the calorie deficit. Yeah, so that's why you hear of people doing like, oh, I'm in a bulking phase, where it's a period of time and afterwards they go back to maintenance, or in a cutting phase, which they go into a deficit for a period of time and then they go back to maintenance, and they sort of switch between switch between them. Okay, like getting to the chase now, more about like, how do you work out your maintenance calories? How do you work out how much energy you need as an individual? And how do you work out the range? And I'm using range because, like I said, we use different amounts of calories each day, each month, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, so you can use online calculators, and there are quite a few out there, you just Google them, but I do really want to stress that they are not accurate because they don't take into consideration all the things I just said: your dieting history, your muscle mass, your body composition, your specific activity level. Some will have like a general, your any illnesses, any previous illnesses, your menstrual cycle. What else is there? What else did I mention? Other things. They generally only look at your like height, weight, gender, and rough activity level. That's very basic and it will not be very accurate, so please keep that in mind. If you did want to get more specific, and there are ways of like figuring it out more accurately using like tech and machines and things like that, but they're expensive and generally not really accessible to everybody. There is something called a BIA machine, bioelectrical impedance assessment. I've completely forgotten it. I'll put it up. But that essentially, you stand on it and it sends electrical current through you and figures out your body composition, because all your tissues use a different amount of energy, so it works out like that. Some gyms have them, so if you're really into it, you can ask your gym. But if you don't have one, then honestly my recommendation is use various calculators if you want, but pinch of salt please. And if you have a nutritionist to hand, then very useful. And also just trying it out. So if you use those calculators and you've got a rough idea, then just go for, and you've got a rough idea of your maintenance, then just use it for 3 to 4 weeks, and then see if you are like gaining heaps of weight, then either 1, it's too high, 2, maybe you were under eating in the first place, and yeah, your body's trying to find a more natural weight that it's comfortable and functions well at. So that's why a nutritionist is really helpful to have, because you can talk these through. And similarly, if you are losing heaps of weight, then maybe it's like way too low. And yeah, so that's pretty much how you do it. Because it's so, the calculator is so inaccurate and people are so individual, then really trial by error. Yeah, that's probably your best bet to do it. And someone asked me my thoughts on calorie counting in general, and my thoughts are that it can be a really useful tool, and like a lot of tools, they're not like super necessary, so you can use it to sort of get a bit of more understanding about how much energy different foods got in it, and understand how much energy you're using and things like that. But it is not necessary to start with if your goals are to gain muscle or gain weight or lose weight. You don't generally try and lose muscle, but it could be. And so you don't have to use it at the start, and that is something I'm really keen on because it's so possible. And you don't have to use it forever as well. Like, it's not necessarily a sustainable method, and it can be very, very harmful and unhelpful for people, like getting caught up on the numbers, tying a lot of self-worth, and also it can get in the way of like social activities and just enjoying your life really. And it also, like I said before, it's a bit of a reductionist point of view where the whole focus is on calories and you're sort of forgetting about all the other amazing things that food brings and the complicated systems, which is food and our bodies. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. But personally, I used to, and it wasn't very good. Now I don't, and I'm still getting all the results that I want to get. But I do, disclaimer, have a bit more, experience, because one, I used to do it, but also I've like paid thousands of dollars on 2 degrees, and yeah, so I've got a bit more of an understanding about what's in food and things. But I 100% believe it's possible that you can have a baseline knowledge, education, and still eat healthily and in a way that will get you to your goals without calorie counting. Like, it's real possible. So that's my thoughts. Okay, next I want to talk a little bit about energy and sports or exercise. And I'll probably do a whole series on sports nutrition, probably, maybe, if that's something you guys want. Because I think it's really interesting to know about how our body uses energy differently depending on what we're doing. There are two general ways we use energy in sport, and you may have heard these before: your anaerobic and your aerobic systems. Generally, there are some more as well, but we'll just keep it simple right now. And so firstly, I'll go through anaerobic, and this is like your short bursts of energy, and this includes like running up the stairs, or a 5 to 10 second sprint, or weightlifting, you know, that exercise, short, sharp, and basically you don't use oxygen in that reaction, and the energy is coming from your glycogen, which is a carbohydrate stored in your muscles. And that glycogen will make up about half of the energy needed, and then the other half is your glucose in your blood and fat stores. Yeah, baseline fat, because we are always burning fat, and that's something that we don't really know, but we are. And so because we are relying on these carbohydrate stores in our muscles, that's why it's really important to fuel up with carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are very important if you are active, which is a lot of people. And so the reason why we get a lactic acid buildup is because in low oxygen conditions, when we are chewing through these carbohydrates and sugars, we produce lactic acid. And if the longer we hold it, so if you've ever done a plank or like a wall sit, you'll know the pain. The longer you hold it, the more lactic acid you feel, because the more you're chewing up those stores. And then if you like stop and take a deep breath and allow oxygen to get back to those muscles, then you can go again. Then the other way is aerobic respiration, we call it, but like the aerobic system, where you are doing endurance activity and you do use a baseline level of fat stores, but because fat is really slow to mobilize, like you know how like fat doesn't I was looking around for like fat then, but you know how if you put fat in water it separates and things, because it's insoluble in water, it takes a while to get around the body. So we use glucose, which is soluble in water. So our glucose that's already in our bodies, in our bloodstream, and the glucose in our muscles and our liver. Our liver is a very key source of glucose or glycogen, as I said, for your endurance activity. And that's like, there's enough glucose in, or carbohydrate, glycogen in your liver to last you a day or around 2 hours of activity. So that's why endurance athletes will consume like sweets and things to keep up their glucose blood levels whilst they're doing endurance activities. But as we deplete those carbohydrate stores after about 2 hours, then we go to fat a lot, and then after a long time, if we're really low on carbohydrates, then and energy pretty much, we'll look to our protein sources. And like I said in my previous videos, we can use protein for energy, but it's not preferred, and we want to keep protein because that comes from our functional proteins and our muscles. Okay, so I hope I kind of explained that okay, but now I want to bring it back to the food level of things and talk about the calories within foods. And the calories within food is made up of is due to the macronutrient ratio of a food. So like I've said this before, different macronutrients have different amounts of energy. So fat and alcohol have 9 calories per gram, and carbohydrates and protein have 4 calories per gram. So the different amounts of those macronutrients within a food will determine the calories, pretty much. Micronutrients don't provide energy, so it's down to the macronutrients. So if we have, what have I got? We've got a soy milk example again. It has 10 grams of carbohydrates, 9.5 grams of fat, 7.5 grams of protein. So using those 9 calories per gram and 4 calories per gram, if we do 10 times 4 is 40, 9.5 times 9 is 85.5, 7.5 times 4 is 30, and yeah, so if we plus all those together, 30 plus 40 plus 85.5, is 155, and that is the same amount of calories as we got doing that kilojoules to kilocalories equation earlier on. So now you know that's how calories are determined, by all these things added up essentially. But yeah, like even though I've just said that fat has more calories, and if your goal is to like be stricter on your calories or whatever, it shouldn't be the whole focus, because like I've said in the previous video, fats are very important for you, like very important for your skin, for your brain, your concentration, your energy levels, your cardiovascular health, like all these things. If you cut out that food group just to be in a deficit, then you will experience problems, and yeah, you just won't feel good. You won't feel good. I hope that was helpful. I hope you have a bit more understanding about like what energy is, how we talk about it, what even is a calorie, how calories exist in food, and how calories are interpreted differently within the food, within the meal, within our bodies, because we're all different, and how we use energy and we use calories differently every day and differently between people. I hope you can sort of like understand a bit more about why you would work out your maintenance calories range or your total daily energy expenditure, and how that could be helpful for you but could not be helpful for you equally, and yeah, how to work it out. What else did I say? Oh yeah, about like total daily energy expenditure. What do we even use energy for? I'm going to do vitamins and minerals as a micronutrient video next week. If you have anything you want me to talk about, then yeah, if you have any questions about this one, then let me know. Yeah, thank you so much, and I will see you on Sunday.